Hey, I'm here joined by some close friends and people had a lot of interaction with Steve Nash. For one, Coach Triano, Jay Triano, who got a chance to coach Steve and is a close friend. Thanks for joining me. He's now assistant coach for the Charlotte Hornets. And we have Marc Stein, reporter for the New York Times, who covered Steve early on in his career, in Dallas. And we also have his former teammate, Amar'e Stoudemire, who, that dynamic, that was a dynamic duo with you guys, attacking the paint, changing the game as we see it today. And you guys get an opportunity to take some time and talk a little bit about Steve Nash. Thank you for joining me. Jay, I know you've known him the longest, but Steve Nash, and I tell you this, I used to get tired of hearing about Steve Nash, how much you talk to me about him and how you praise him. I'm like, come on, man, I'm tired of hearing about this dude. But you gave me some great stories, some great insight. What are some of the things that you could talk about Steve Nash early on, as a Canadian coming out of Canada as a basketball player?
Well, I think the biggest thing was how great a competitor he was at everything that he did. I started recruiting him in the 10th grade, and I remember going over to Vancouver Island to watch him, and I would watch him play rugby, I would watch him play basketball, I would watch him play soccer, and he was like the best player on every team in every sport throughout the whole province. So I knew this kid was a great athlete, and then I got to know him over time, and those are the things that I remember the most, and why we had such a long history of our friendship is just because as great as he was on the court, he was just that good a person off the court.
No doubt. And you take that, and that was early on. And he gained a whole lot of success playing with Amar'e Stoudemire. Those Phoenix Suns team, man, they were a monster. Quick tempo, inside-out game, and you had a dominant guy like Amar'e in the paint. But what were some of the things that Nash brought to you that helped your game and helped that team the way they performed in those early years of 2000?
Well, you know what, man? A lot of times with us, we were when we first linked up, it happened organically. Steve and I, the 1-2 combination was just something that was just easy for us to kind of get used to. Steve brought a style of play that was very intriguing for us, because having a true point guard makes the game so much easier. And so, and the way Steve played, he played with an up-tempo style. His guy was always in great shape. He was always like having his own training with him, and he kept himself in shape because he wanted to keep his core tight because of his back issues. But he kept himself in top shape, man, and we had to keep up with him.
We all remember as fans as, and all those things, those years with Phoenix and how dominant you guys were. And, he was a 2-time MVP. But prior to that, Marc, he was in Dallas where you got a chance to cover him a lot. And it wasn't so rosy early on. And I remember going to Dallas and hearing him get booed, Knew he was a great player, but it wasn't as easy for him, early on. So what were those things? What was that like, that environment with Nash over there early on as a young player?
Look, you're exactly right. The first 2 years in Dallas were not good. And just to kind of show you the character that Steve has, his first year was the worst. That was the year that, he had the game where he got booed at home, and, he got hurt in a pickup game right before that season started, got knocked out of the air, landed on his back, and didn't realize really till the end of his first season how bad that injury was. He basically played his whole first year in Dallas with, it's not exactly a medical term, but he had a broken back basically. And that first year was so rough, but he spent more time taking care of Dirk Nowitzki and getting him acclimated to the NBA than his own struggles. And I think that was another thing that doesn't get talked about as much as it should. But I really believe that it was going to the 2000 Olympics with a team that no one expected anything from, and getting that team to within a win of the medal round, and the way Steve played leading that group, that was really the springboard for him turning his career around. He came back to Dallas, became an all-star, and then everybody remembers what happened when he and Amar'e hooked up in Phoenix, and Amar'e and Marion were just such perfect tag team partners for him. And with Mike D'Antoni, it took Steve's game to a new level.
But I remember also him going to Phoenix was another, unconventional style of playing with Amar'e. That pick and roll was so dangerous and opened up everything the way Stat used to roll to the basket. How did Steve elevate or help elevate your game, if not at all, Amar'e?
Well, you know what? The thing is, when I came into the league, man, I was like a power forward that was very agile. and my style of play actually fitted perfectly with Steve, because we both were, up-tempo guys. And I was a guy who wanted to finish at the basket. I had no fear with attacking the rim. And so with Steve being able to feed the rock to me where I'm able to attack the rim, made the game so much easier. It got to the point where it became so easy where I didn't really have to use, a lot of my skill set that I had.
Mm-hmm.
But it showed, my skill sets, somewhat showed sometimes in the playoffs and in certain games. But, I didn't have to do too much because having a true point guard, man, he makes the game easy for you. And so, Steve and I just kind of, we fit perfectly together. It was like an easy combination between him and I.
Yeah, and Jay, you talk about his early career, and you talk about just the type of person he is, and the type of person he was as a youngster. And once again, I reflect back, and any interaction I had with him, he was always polite, respectful. And that attitude, does that come from early coaching, from someone like yourself, the upbringing, and how does that translate through the whole picture of his NBA career?
Well, I think you got to give a lot of credit to his parents and how he was raised. Mark talked a little bit about the Olympics, and Steve was not great leading into the Olympics. And I remember a game in Puerto Rico, and for us to qualify, and we were going through the scouting report, and I just said flatly to him, he asked me, he said, "Hey, coach, you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I just don't know if we have enough points tonight." I said, "We can score here, we can score here." And I said, I don't know, you might have to get 25. And he had only been averaging about 10, 11 because he was like the distributor, making sure everybody else got going. I said, "You might have to score a lot more tonight." He said, 25? He says, "I got you." He had 27 and we qualified.
And this is more open question to all you guys. How much did Steve influence the way the game is played today? You see Steph Curry, you see these guys, and I'm like, Steve Nash was doing those things. And to your point, Jay, he could score. He was a hell of a three-point shooter. Foul line, that was automatic. He finished at the basket, but he also can find players. How much does he influence today's game? And anyone can answer that question.
I mean, I think today's game is definitely something that has been somewhat mocked from what we have done in Phoenix, And with Steve, the way the game is played now, I mean, I really technically don't really see a player that can play like Steve in today's game.
Mm-hmm.
Because most point guards nowadays want to score They want to score. They want to be shooting guards. The guys want to score most of the time. And Steve was actually a true point guard who put his teammates first. And like Coach was saying about Steve is that he was such a humble guy where he would take care of everyone else before himself. So I don't see any humble guys like Steve in today's game.
I spend more time wondering what would it have been like for those Suns teams to be able to play now, because they were ahead of their time. And when Steve went there in 2004, I spent a lot of time in Phoenix over the next 6 years watching those teams. And to this day, when I run into Mike D'Antoni, he says it every time I see him. Why didn't I make Steve shoot more? Why didn't we shoot more threes? We should have gone to an even further extreme. It's against Steve's nature, as Jay explained there. He's always been a reluctant shooter, but the Suns were ahead of their time, and I really wonder. I put them really at the top of my list of the best teams that never had a chance to win it all.
In Toronto, of course, in Canada, all over Canada, it's that recognition, and they give Vince Carter a lot for helping the Canadian game and bringing it and putting a light on it for the young players of today. We see how many Canadians that are actually in the NBA and doing very well. But I feel like Steve, when I don't hear Steve's name that much when those things are brought about, but he has to get a ton of credit for that explosion as well, correct?
Absolutely. And I think what Vince did was Vince provided all the highlights and every kid started playing. And then Steve provided the belief that a Canadian kid could do it. And, so every kid tried to be like Vince, not knowing what was ahead of them. When Steve Nash broke through, made it to the NBA, became an all-star, became an MVP, the rest of Canada said, "Hey, we can be as good as this guy. The door is open," and that's why basketball in this country has gone crazy.
And before I let you go, one question. I got to get some dirt, some scoop, something going on. Steve is the ultimate, the perfect person. I can't believe that. I know there's something out there, and if there's any stories somebody could tell me, something funny, something. We ain't got to disclose everything, but tell me something, Jay.
I got a good one. When we were training in Vancouver one year. We had all these guys, and people in Vancouver felt like they should tell me everything my players are doing. So I get a phone call early in the morning, and they said, Coach, I don't know if you're practicing today, but the boys were out at 3 a.m. last night, and they were running through the streets, and Steve was doing soccer dives on his chest into a taco shop. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him tomorrow. So we get on the bus to go to practice, and I'm like, okay, and I'm counting the players as they go on, and there's only 11 guys, and I'm going, okay, I got them. And everybody says, we're going to wait, we're going to wait. I said, we're not waiting, we're going to practice. We get to practice. As I walk in, and I'm feeling good, like I'm going to show my best player that this is not acceptable. I go in there, and he's in the gym, and he's sweating, and he's already soaked, and he runs right over to me, and he said, Coach, we went out last night. He said, I had a couple drinks, but I got here early. I've been working out for 2 hours. I sweated all out. I'm ready to practice. And I was just like, I was like, dang, I can't even get the guy for this.
That's a hell of a story, man. And that's that NBA life, but that's the reason why he is who he is. Guys, I really, truly appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me. And I know it's a holiday for some, and well, everyone's in the States, I guess. Are you in the States, Amar'e?
No, I'm actually in Israel right now. I just picked my son up from basketball practice.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm in Tel Aviv at the moment.
Well, definitely thank you for taking the time, man. We really appreciate it. But Steve he's caused this generation this momentum, and I know everyone's proud of him and happy to talk about him. So thank you again for taking your times out, Marc as well. And hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.